always good to talk to you.
Thank you for having me, Jenny.
No trouble. It has been a long battle. I mean, how long? How many stories and how many months have you been doing this series?
I started in October. I can't count the number of stories. I'd say it's about 20 now.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've just left no stone unturned with D.C. because even though we've made a lot of progress and they are changing the laws, even the way they're enforcing the current laws, it just every time you turn a corner, you find something else they're doing that's just not in favor of gun owners.
Well, and gun owners have to thank you, boy, in D.C., because, finally you're saying D.C. is starting to fold a bit, proving that by keeping up the pressure, it's starting to pay off.
That's right. I just in the past couple of weeks, I've made some progress because there's been a bunch of things that I've seen how the police have implemented the laws incorrectly or make it much more difficult for people to get guns, own guns, transport guns. And I've continually gone back and forth to the police department and said, here are actual facts of case that things need to change, and they refused to do it. So finally I went to Phil Mendelson, who's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the City Council of D.C., and the man who wrote the laws, repeatedly said to him, if you have oversight of this police department and the gun registry office, then these are things that need to be done. And to his great credit, Mr. Mendelson wrote a very stern letter to Police Chief Kathy Lanier with about 15 points in it, and hit all the points that I've been saying to him and writing about. And he referenced quite often, media reports, and demanded changes. And the police still being slightly resistant, though they are making some changes. Mm-hmm. 3 central areas.
Yeah, and I thought, you're so right. I mean, Council Mendelson, he could have said to you, yeah, I got your information. I'll take a look at it and just done that. Take a look at it and done nothing. But he really has taken the ball and started to run with it, especially with a couple items. When it comes to number one, the whole fact that they were giving out misleading and improper information when it comes to transporting a firearm in D.C.
That's right. And this is an issue that's not just about D.C. residents. It's about anyone in America who wants to visit the
anybody
capital.
Coming there. Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah, which is millions of people every year, obviously. And the D.C. government has put out all their paperwork and their website on transporting guns, incorrect information. They would say that you have to be transporting the gun for a firearm-related activity. That's not correct. They would say that you can't. That if you call their office and ask if you could stop for gas in the city, they say no. I mean, there's just all these things, and I've heard a lot of stories of false arrests or questionable arrests based on these things. So finally now, since Mr. Mendelson has forced the police, they have updated their website and they have updated all the documents that they do give out at the office to say what are the actual transport laws in D.C., which are quite simply the federal law, which is as long as you're taking your gun from someplace where you can carry and possess to another place for legal reasons and you have it properly stowed, there's no reason for you to get in any trouble in D.C. I think this will give a lot of peace of mind to people coming through D.C. with their firearms.
Yeah, because among the concerns, you couldn't stop to get a drink at the store. You couldn't go to the restroom. You couldn't do anything.
Right.
You're in trouble.
Right, and that's actually not true. And the federal law is quite clear on that you can do all those things. And, of course, federal law trumps state law. But a lot of states like New Jersey is like this, New York is like this in some ways, where the state laws are more restrictive. It puts you in the position of somebody you have to get arrested, spend a couple nights in jail, and pay for a lawyer before you have to even present the federal law to get yourself off. So I think now that D.C. is more in line to what the law is and the rest of the country, I think it'll be a lot more helpful for tourists coming through and for D.C. residents like me who want to go practice and train but was afraid to get falsely arrested on my way down the street to Virginia.
It's interesting because it really shows what people in the district have to deal with. Because you have this letter that Mendelson wrote, but still, as you mentioned, the police department refuses to admit they were doing anything wrong, that they were giving out false information.
I mean, I went back and forth, and there's several points in his letter with the police. I mean, back and forth. One of them is that I've been saying to Mendelson, there is one legal gun dealer in the city. His name is Charles Sykes, and there are no gun stores. It's very complicated for someone in the city who's buying a gun. Not a lot of people in D.C. have a gun, to learn how this process works. That you have to buy a gun from someone out of state, then you have to pay the one gun dealer in the city, Charles Sykes, a $125 transfer fee to have the gun transferred. And I said to him, it's glaringly missing from the registration packet, from the website, from any information about A, that this process exists, how to contact Charles Sykes, his name, his phone number. His office is in the same building as the police department, but you wouldn't know that. And finally, that the cost of $125 is mandatory because there are no gun stores in D.C., so you can't buy a gun in the city. You have to transfer it, and that's a total fees, bring the total fees to right now I paid $465. Once this new gun law is passed, we don't have to take a gun safety class anymore. It'll be about $185. But you look in the registration packet if you're a potential gun owner, and you only see $60 in fees.
Mm-hmm.
So
it really is misleading, and you as a gun owner, and you have to ask, is this intentional? Because they don't want people to have firearms in the district. They just don't want it. They don't want a range. They don't want a gun shop, and they do everything to make it possible to open one.
Well, I won't. There's my opinion, and there's what they say. They say, both, whereas the council and the police say, we don't want to add more red tape. We want to cut the red tape. And, I'll say that they say this now. In the past 6 months, I've been working on this series. They say this. I've never heard them ever say anything about wanting to cut red tape or make it easier before all this. So, they have this sudden new awareness, and obviously, the real threat is getting called back into court. And there's another, Dick Heller has another case pending, and I think, obviously that's their real fear, is getting all their restrictive gun laws overturned, like registering at all. There's so many things. There are no carry laws in D.C. at all. They have so many problems, and they're going to be facing all this stuff in court. So they're trying, I would guess, is that at least on the stuff that I'm showing them, which is not that big of a stuff to change because it's not going to really change gun ownership in this city that much, they're willing to do that because they think that'll help them with court cases coming up.
But it is a step in the right direction for everybody there.
Oh, it's going to make it a lot easier. And, it's just a matter of, as frustrating as I get, I have to just keep calling the police department and calling the council, or I just show up there a lot, too.
Yeah, you got them to update the test.
That's the other thing. Yeah, it's ridiculous, but D.C. makes you take an actual written test before you can get your gun registration. And the questions were so antiquated, and a lot of them weren't even listed in the study guide. There are obviously trick questions. First of all, I think it's outrageous that to exercise your Second Amendment right, you have to take a written test. Yeah. That being said, if you do, it shouldn't have trick questions. It should have basically, what are the 3 NRA safety rules? What are the gun laws on carry in D.C.? There are none. Basic things like that. Instead, it asks these absurd questions like, at what year does a firearm be considered antique? Mm-hmm. And, I'm supposed to be looking up. It's just ridiculous. So I've been saying to the council for months that this is, a trick, and they really need to change it. So finally, in that same letter to the police chief, Mr. Mendelson said he wants that test updated. So they have updated a little bit last week after some pressure, and they're going to be updating it more in the future. So hopefully it won't make it so that somebody can't get a gun because they can't pass a dumb test.
So how soon do you think we'll see these changes?
Truly, it's every day that I call, suddenly a new change happens. It's very frustrating. But the documents on the website have been updated with an addendum. That's out there now. So anybody now who goes to get a gun will have this updated information, at least on the gun transfers, and the test is slightly updated. More of it, and Charles Sykes is named the one transfer, so you actually know how to buy a gun. That should be happening within the next week or two. And then everything has to be updated by the time the new law is implemented, which is another curveball I've been hit with, is the mayor was supposed to sign the law when it was passed by the city council on April 17th. He was supposed to sign it immediately and hasn't. And I've asked his spokesman repeatedly, why hasn't he signed this law? It was unanimous in the city council, and I'm not getting an answer. So the whole point of the law was to do it on an emergency basis, to get it through so that it wouldn't sit around to change these laws, and suddenly the mayor's sitting on it. And that's, another really important thing that needs to change immediately.
Well, good work, Emily. I got to tell you that. And I remember you took the chairman to the range.
Kwame Brown, yes.
Right. And I know he said he wanted to go back because he wanted to learn how to shoot a shotgun so he could go hunting. Have you heard whether he's done that yet?
Well, I'm going to invite him when the weather gets a little bit nicer. I think I'll take him, maybe try some skeet and clays and, go down that angle. He wants to learn how to hunt, so that's going to be our next outing.